Hello, nerds for Yang.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds! So nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, now with this campaign, bang, dang, is.
Hello, nerds! Welcome to the show.
Nerds!
Woo! We have the one and only. Well, they're not the one and only. There's probably many lesbians for Yang, but we have the official Twitter account, Lesbians for Yang. We have Heidi and Jenna. Guys, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Love it. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited. Thank you.
So let us start with a little bit of a chat about your backgrounds for those who don't know you, or maybe people just kind of know you. What sort of your pre-Yang story, like where are you guys living? Who are you? What do you do? And then we'll, of course, get into policy and all that good stuff soon after.
Totally. We met just fairly recently in Reno, Nevada, and fell in love, and the story goes from there. But we got married in Lake Tahoe. I was working at the Tesla factory, and Jenna was in real estate, and we decided to move to Pacific Northwest. This is all just pre-Yang, sort of where we came from, and then we moved to Portland together, and then got into all of that. But before that, I was actually a PhD dropout, so I am a bit of a nerd.
Oh yeah.
I was in applied linguistics, and before that I was an English teacher, and I taught in Taiwan and South Korea. And I also, even before that, I was in politics. So I have a BA in politics, and then my master's was in English. So those kind of combined, which is strange. Actually, Noam Chomsky has the same combination, which is kind of interesting. But so that's kind of where I came from. I have a politics background. I have actually, my aunt was a state senator in California, and so I worked in Sacramento for a while. And then I got really into teaching and English and linguistics, went on that path, and then kind of jumped out of there and was sort of just figuring out what to do. And then I met this lady here, and then we moved to Portland together shortly after we got married.
Our 1 year anniversary is actually in a week, so we've almost been married.
Ooh, congratulations.
Yeah, so it's been a really good year getting ourselves established here in Portland. I'm a Reno, Nevada local. I've been there my whole life. This is actually my first big move to Portland, which was a great idea thanks to this one. I love nerds. I am obsessed with them, so that's why I was attached to this one. Just kind of an outdoorsy girl. I'm born and raised, worked a lot, did some motocross, snowboarding, just kind of like had some fun, and then needed to kind of spread my wings a little bit. My cat is like attacking me back here. Having a passion for politics is really new and recent to me. This one here kind of got me more involved. And Andrew is definitely outside the norm of what normal politics are like, political figures are like, and I like that he's supporting everybody. So that's kind of what brought me to the table. And being in Portland is a great environment to kind of express yourself and be however you want to be, and people are accepting of it. And just being in that mindset really helps me see a vision for the future of the world that I would love to live in. So being with Heidi has been an adventure, a lot of personal growth and development, and ideas of doing big and great things. And because I'm with her, she started the whole Lesbians for Yang. She's really the mastermind behind the whole thing. I'm just kind of a cute figure attached to. So, but it's been an adventure. It's great. I can't wait to see where else we go. And everything's big. We just got new jobs. We're getting a new place. Things are moving. So it's been a great year. I can't wait for 2020, especially with the campaign. It's just a good kind of keeps you fueled and keeps you going. So I'm excited about it, and I'm really happy to be doing these kind of interviews. So.
Well, yeah, what an interesting story, and congratulations again on approaching your 1-year anniversary.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been
I think I'm at like, we passed 15. Yeah, we're at 16 now.
nice.
Congratulations.
Yes,
Thank you.
Amazing.
I love it.
Let me tell you something. It's a lot of work, though. It's a lot.
We just have to warm up. We're gonna warm up.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah, so it has to be like good. Like we're like, okay, well, we're gonna be the best at it because we're very competitive. So how can we do this the right way?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, it's it definitely requires a lot of sacrifice and a lot of like more compromise than pre-marriage, at least for us.
Yeah.
And then what's also interesting is then as you go through life's journey, your interests evolve, and like what you want to spend time on is not the same as like when you were in your 20s, and you had different interests. And so but it's also like quite magical in terms of like what for me it's always been. We got married because we're madly in love, but we stay married because we're enjoying being partners on this kind of life journey, which is like a different vibe, but even more powerful in some ways. Yeah.
Magical, for sure.
Yeah. So, and then as a former Seattle resident, I I saw your tweet about having coffee and it looked like the streets had a little rain on the roads. I was like, I know that scene. So tell me a little bit about, I guess, Heidi, you've been in, you mentioned that you worked at the Tesla factory. I was super curious. Like, what is that like working at a Tesla factory?
Whew. It was intense for me. So I've been like a professional student and worked in offices. Those are the only types of jobs I really had until I took this job in the factory. Mm-hmm. And I'm not really sure why I did. I think I was just like, I had moved to Reno and I was looking for work. Some things happened. I was living in Arizona and I lost a really good job I had there and I didn't know what to do. And my mom had a place for me to stay in Reno. And I was like, I don't really want to go to Reno, but we'll see what happens. Get there. And that's a Tulsi. Our cat's named Tulsi.
You came to Reno for me. You came to Reno for me.
Love.
Okay, I thought she was pointing at the cat. Okay.
Well, the people in the chat love the cat, by the way. The people in the chat love the cat.
So then I'm in Reno, and pretty much the main big pull in Reno is the Tesla factory. That's where a lot of jobs were. So I applied actually for a sales position, which is sort of what I do now, but I didn't get that. And they're like, well, do you want to be in production? And I'm like, not really, but it's a foot in the door. And I'm kind of curious. I want to see what it's like there and what the factory looks like. So I took the job and I took a graveyard shift because it was more money. So it was crazy. You go in there and it's extremely high tech. There's robots everywhere. There's an automatic line, but the automatic line was having a lot of problems. So it was basically like robots building the battery modules for the Tesla Model 3s is what they were focused on at that time. So it was all just like these robots building them, but they were having problems with it. It wasn't quite working as fast as they thought it would. And normally they would just have one operator, so they didn't have to hire very many people. But it wasn't working out so well, so they created a semi-auto line, and then they had to hire a bunch of people. So I actually worked on the semi-auto. So we had like sort of a conveyor / robot type of thing that we monitored. And part of it was automatic, but part of it we had to work on. So basically, we're creating like the first step in the battery modules of the Model 3, putting the little Panasonic, little battery, I forget what they're called now, little cells, putting the cells and attaching them to sort of like a piece of metal and gluing them on, and then it turns into a battery module at the end. It was pretty interesting. I got to say, there's robots that would deliver things to us, and we would, put things on a robot and it would move over here. And then I saw Elon like 3 times.
She saw him, yeah.
Coming in and like, being like, hey, this isn't working right. What are you guys doing? And just like yelling at the engineers kind of thing. And like,
he really does yell. I know he has a reputation for being pretty hardcore. You saw a little bit of that?
It was kind of like I wasn't in that conversation. I'm like working on the line, but I see him over there and he's kind of like, what is this? What are you guys doing? This shouldn't be this way. And just like fixing things. And then he would come in and the next day we'd come in and be like, we're doing everything all different because obviously Elon was here. So I saw like his twins run around one day. They were like running up and down the factory, and it was really, really interesting. I mean, to see how things were going. The job was extremely brutal, though. Extremely difficult, just mind numbing, like especially for someone like me who likes, critical thinking and was used to that kind of work, working more with my mind. Just doing repetitive physical labor is just like so punishing on the body and then the mind too, because it's just extremely boring. So you just see people like whatever doing drugs at work because they're so bored and the job's so easy, or doing all kinds of things that they should not be doing, but it does go on in these factory environments because they just kind of need to hire anybody and they just throw them in there and go for it. And that's what happens. It's not always safe. There was definitely some, safety concerns that everybody was aware of. It's just sort of like a factory environment. But what we were building was awesome. I mean, very high quality, high standards. And I worked on the quality assurance team for a while, made sure everything was good and high standards, and it was. But I would say that it was extremely interesting experience overall. I like that I was a part of it.
The interesting thing about production is we generally talk about the loss of production jobs in America as, really a terrible thing.
Right.
Obviously, because a lot of people have not been able to find good replacement jobs. But I think what's interesting is you point out a good perspective, which is, well, even for the people that have these manufacturing jobs, it's not the most enriching thing for your body or your mind. And maybe the real end game is we don't have to do that kind of menial labor, but people still have a way to provide for themselves and their family. I mean, I guess you saw it first. You guys saw it firsthand a little bit.
Right. And I didn't kind of go into this in my background because I was nervous, but most of my background is in housing. I did low income housing for 5 years. And then I did a little bit of for-profit housing here and then real estate. But in Nevada, making $17 an hour was a big deal. It also added to the housing crisis in Nevada because once Tesla came in, it drawed in a bunch of people that were like, oh my gosh, I can make $17 an hour, work 12-hour shifts. And so these people are killing themselves working graveyards and then barely being able to afford a place, which actually spiked the housing costs in Nevada. And it wasn't even much different than living here in Portland. So we were like, well, why would we pay the same amount to live in Portland? A big part of my passion for Andrew Yang is there's a ton of homeless people living on the streets here in Portland. There's a lot of people that do not have access to affordable housing, even people that are working full-time jobs or even 2 jobs. And so she was working in a factory working 12-hour shifts, but still had to live with her mom. And even when we moved out, we needed roommates to rent a tiny 3-bedroom house, and we're in our 30s. And so that's it's hard on the mind to be like, you're working so hard, but you're not even being able to financially support yourself and be on your own 2 feet.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was sort of like a temporary job to me. I never was like, this is so great. It was kind of like, crap, what else can I do? I don't know. So I took the job. It was sort of like, I just need a job type of job. But then I got there and people were like, oh my God, this is the best job I've ever had. And I'm just like, it is? And they were so thankful that they could work this brutal 12-hour graveyard shift, because then they could before they were probably making $12 an hour. Now they're making 17. So suddenly, whatever, they could feed their family better. But I was just trying to talk to these people and be like, hey, open your mind. You could actually do better if you want, or or you need to think of other things you can do, because as soon as Tesla gets through this rush, it's just all going to be robots here. Because look, that's what they're leading us up to. And they're kind of oh no, I'm going to buy a Tesla. I'm going to stay here and get all the stock, and I'm going to stay here forever. And I'm like, well, I mean, maybe I hope that works out for you. But so, I mean, even, you saw people with their bodies being really just broken down. Old people, really old people working in factories, super sad. Just I mean, I don't want to see a 60-some-year-old person have to work a factory job.
It was brilliant for him to build it in Nevada, though, because basic entry-level jobs were paying maybe $13 to maybe $15 an hour. And so everybody was chomping at the bit to get in this job. And yeah, he needs people, but there was quite a bit of a turnover rate there, correct? And not like, it was pretty easy to kind of be let go if you weren't working these gruesome hours or this mandatory overtime. And just like, you're already working 12-hour shifts, like 4 days a week. They're like, well, I need you to do it 5 days a week.
Or 6 days or 7 days sometimes, until they were like, oh, wait, that's illegal. We can't do that anymore. But
and so,
yeah, it was, it's production. It's like, it's crazy. But I hope, in the future that, people don't have to do that kind of brutalizing work. But I guess, my experience there sort of, opened my eyes to a lot about automation and a lot about our need for something else for people to do, like another path forward, because I just don't believe that that's a long-term path for anybody. Like, I know it wasn't for me, but I was just more aware of that. I was just seeing it for what it was. But a lot of those people were like, this is like my end all be all. This is the best thing I'm ever going to get. And if it's gone, like, I'm in trouble.
Did you guys see that Netflix documentary? It's called American Factory.
We did.
Yeah, we watched that one.
That was crazy.
Oh, interesting. I was just like,
I wasn't surprised, but like, the Americans couldn't keep up with production.
And, like, it didn't seem like a great life for the Chinese dudes, and both the Chinese in the Chinese factory or the Chinese in the American factory.
I know, the like woman that broke my heart that was like, yeah, I work 14-hour days and I see my kid once every 4 months, and that's fine. I have money, and I'm just like, that sounds really depressing.
It's like, who wants to compete with that? Like, that's not a life. And I worry that those folks will be subject to automation too. Like, even if they're willing to work 6-7 days a week, it's not going to be as cheap as a machine over the long term. So
robots always going to win. That's what Andrew Yang talks about. It doesn't matter if you're a diligent factory worker.
Yeah. No matter how hardworking you are, you're not going to beat someone that's going to work 24 hours a day.
Well, and if we can get people out of those labor-intensive, mind-numbing jobs, ultimately, like, that's where I am kind of pro-automation. Like, need people wasting their lives doing that kind of stuff. There's so much more creativity and so much more value in the human that I would much rather promote them doing different kind of work than having to do something like that. Like, yeah, let the robots do it,
Totally agree. Like, I was talking to Brandon, one of my sons who's super interested in Yang, and he was like, oh yeah, we don't like the robots. I was like, no, not necessarily. Like, if you fast forward to the end game, and robots are doing all the grunt work that we don't want to do, and that frees up time for us to spend time with each other or hiking or doing art or whatever, like, that's not a bad outcome. What we just need to make sure that the economic benefits are accessible to as many people as possible, so it's not just like the one robot factory owner who gets all the money and the rest of us are screwed kind of thing.
It's gotta be.
You just gotta do the math, and then we can share the money, and then we can all smoke the marijuana.
Yeah, I didn't get into that with him just yet. He's a little young. maybe when he's in college, I'll send him a brownie or something. All right, so Jenna, you mentioned that you were not hardcore into politics in the past.
Yeah.
And I was curious, like, when did you sort of decide to join the YangGang? And obviously Heidi had probably something to do with it, but I'm wondering, like, what was that process like? Were you leaning in a different direction, or what were you thinking?
I was really just outside of the loop. Like, I kind of figured that the rich had deep pockets and were kind of controlling everything. I did believe in vote. I still voted. I just wasn't super involved in the beginning with trying to get the right elected official on the ballot. Like, I haven't been this pre-involved. Like, I do pay attention once it comes down to voting, but yeah, of course, she had a huge part into it. She kind of mentioned Andrew, and she was passionate about it. I'm like, okay, if you love him, like, I support it. And that's
what my wife says.
And I was like, okay, hey, if it's that important to you, like I'm down, I'll listen. And he was coming into town, I think about a month or so after she was already in YangGang, but I was about a month in of kind of being supportive and reading his policies and the $1,000 a month. Just kind of like how I could see that could help so many individuals, like just help so many people. Passionate about the homeless population, women, the LGBT community, just in so many ways, being able to really revitalize our capitalist society and make it to where all of the individuals have the power to make maneuvers and support themselves and build nonprofits. Like Heidi and I want to do some nonprofit work for young women. I want to do some nonprofit work where I can help the homeless get access to their UBI, and then maybe we can kind of get them starting into like actually being a civil, being treated like a human. Like for me, once I started just kind of like seeing all the benefits of everything, and then we met him. So he came into town, just said, let's buy tickets, let's meet him. And we went and saw him, and he came up and gave us like 2 hugs. He like gave us a hug. He's like, congratulations to the newlyweds. And then he was leaving and gave us another hug. And he's like, oh, congratulations. And I heard him speak. And, Heidi was listening to every YouTube thing obsessively. And so that was kind of like just in my sphere. And,
right.
It made me think that, hey, we actually do have a voice. We do have power. What is more important than our future? And it just kind of shifted my perspective. And now I love the YangGang, and I've never seen a political movement like this with any other presidential candidate. And it's something that's very inspiring. And as a spiritual person, kind of loving and giving back and treating everybody equally is a huge foundation for myself. And I see that in Andrew Yang. And just the unity factor of who he is, and a lot of his proposals made me go, this is something I want to support. I want to tell everybody about it. I want them to like make that decision for themselves and not be pushy about it. I walked around downtown in Portland, and I was just kind of canvassing and just saying, hey, have you heard about Andrew Yang? And I was talking to people, and a lot of people kind of blew me off, but some people wanted to have conversations, go, oh yeah, I've heard of this guy. He kind of sounds pretty good. And I don't know, it kind of like tapped into this humanitarian version of myself. And I saw that this is a good outlet to be that way, to kind of spread that love, that connectivity, the vision. I realized that if we change our mental state, we can all change the world. And if we can share that mental vision of we deserve better, we deserve for everybody to be treated equally and supported, and we can do this together, and we can create so much more to get all at one. It doesn't have to be two-sided. I like his not left, not right, but forward. He's kind of like, it's not really about the political party. It's not even really about me. It's about the change. And I think that is huge. And even just having that message out in the world and people paying attention is already a huge shift in our mental state, to where it's like, we can do this, and if it doesn't happen now, it's going to eventually happen because that conversation is being had. So it's just hugely, because I love her and I support her. And then I kind of like got connected into my passion of just loving and supporting the world and wanting to live in a place that is better for everybody, basically.
It is amazing how diverse the YangGang is. Like, there's this narrative like, oh, it's a bunch of, well, initially people were saying it's all white supremacists. And that's just weird. and then it was like, oh, it's just like sort of bros. But it was funny. I was talking to someone this week, and they're like, oh, hey, let's get together on Saturday night, because I'm in Switzerland. It's nighttime now. I was like, oh no, I can't. I've got a conversation with the Lesbians for Yang.
Yay, thank you.
That's right. And they were like, they're not in the YangGang. They're not familiar. They said, what are you doing? And I said, dude, the YangGang is diverse, man. We got people from all backgrounds supporting this guy. And I was thinking to myself, why do you guys think that like a lot of marginalized people or traditionally marginalized group have gravitated to the YangGang? I have a theory that I feel like he seems to understand underdogs well, but I was curious, like, what if you have any thoughts about like why this movement is so interesting and diverse?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. He definitely is an underdog, and so then it kind of attracts underdogs. I agree with that part of it. I think it's also, I mean, to be honest, a lot of it definitely is the freedom dividend, because I think that if you're a marginalized group, that means you don't have a leg up in society. You've been pushed down. You've been literally with, like he says, the boot on your throat, and that's economics. So I think that if you're a minority, if you're LGBT, if you're a person of color, if you're an immigrant, certain groups, women, single moms, that like, hey, $1,000 a month, a lot of times in your life would have made a massive difference, sometimes more than others. But if you knew that you had that consistently, like let's say as a young LGBT person, in high school, and your family doesn't accept you, common story. But if you knew when I graduate from high school, you know what, like it's okay, because I'm going to get my freedom dividend, and maybe I'll get together with some other LGBT kids and we can like rent a room or something and we'll be okay. We can go get jobs. And I think you just start like those, I don't know, I just feel like marginalized groups can attach to that idea of like, wow, that would really help me so many times in my life. And I would like everybody to have that. And I would like everybody in my group to have that. And then you dive deeper into Andrew Yang and you realize, oh, he's legit. Like he actually has a lot of policies that help my group and other groups too. And it's not specific to identity, 160 plus policies that would help so many different people. And then you start thinking of other people you love that would help. And then you're like, wow, this guy's really thought it out and he really does care. You can just see it. And that genuineness, you're missing that as a marginalized group. You're always missing like somebody who genuinely cares, because the politicians have been pandering to you for years and saying, oh, gay rights, blah, blah, blah. And then flipping and changing when it's convenient and going back and forth. And, you don't believe it. Like even like you have Obama, Clinton, all these people who were against it and then for it when it got popular enough. And you don't believe it anymore. But you have someone like Andrew Yang who's just like, like I mean, I just genuinely think he's a genuine person. You just like listen to him talk, you listen to him speak. He's just a genuine person that wants to help, and you can tell. Real knows real, basically. If you're a marginalized group, you've been through some real crap, and you can tell if somebody's feeding you lines or if they're really trying to help you or not. And so I think that the freedom dividend is like entryway drug. And then once you're in, you're like, oh, wow, there's all this other great stuff here. And like, I like it. And then you meet other people in the YangGang and you're like, oh, you're a YangGang too. Awesome. And it's so diverse and inclusive that it's like, this is where you feel comfortable. And it's the only place you feel comfortable in the whole political game at some point.
And he comes from a marginalized group. He's an immigrant. He had to deal with a lot of racism growing up. And he's kind of built a thick skin to it. Like even when you see him in his interviews, they try to push him down. They try to like make him slip up, and he just stays professional. He stays very respectful. Like he has a huge amount of respect for people, even the people that are disrespecting him. And just like the YangGang, the freedom dividend, he is building value in people that have not been valued. He's putting value in the American people and seeing that if we can strengthen our society from the bottom up, that will help us all overall. And I think that's why it's what she was saying, Heidi was saying about the freedom dividend, is you're putting value into every single citizen. And that is not anything that any other politician has done. I'll help this specific group, or I'll help this specific group. Or if you're low income, you can get this kind of city. And maybe, okay, or you can stay in this house, but you have to label yourself, as disabled or something. Like you have to have some kind of qualifying factor to get help. And this is nope, you just have to be here. You just have to be a citizen. You are feeding our economy, and so we're going to give back and thank you for that and make you a shareholder into what everything that we are appreciating. We're in this together, and we're going to value that. And the fact that he gives us value anybody that is not financially well off, is not well connected, is not has not experienced marginalization in any way. I mean, I don't think he's even including them. He's saying, you know, everybody can get it. I'm not trying to say he's not marginalizing anybody, basically. And the fact that he is saying every single person is valued really wakes people up to be like, wow, this is a message that our political figures should be sending. This is the message that we all want to hear and want to see in realization, basically.
Yeah, that is a great point about the freedom dividend being available to everybody, in that it's the ultimate a lot of people are frustrated or they're concerned about identity politics. Like, freedom dividend is the ultimate like, doesn't matter if you're rich, you're poor, you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, straight, gay, what, you know, homeless, with a home, everybody gets it.
Right.
And in a way, like, then it really does avoid this concern of people saying, well, that's not fair. Why did they get it and I didn't get it? And it just brings us all together in an interesting way. And you guys brought up homelessness a couple times. And I was recently in, you know, San Francisco, and it's pretty rough over there in terms of the amount of the size of the homeless population. And I was curious, what do you guys think would be the impact of the freedom dividend in, let's say, the Portland scene? Do you think a lot of people moved to Portland and then became homeless, and they went there maybe because of access to services and stuff like that? Like, do you think that would change, or like, what would happen if the freedom dividend were implemented for everybody, for the homeless people?
Specifically in Portland?
Yeah. In Portland, like, how do you think it would make a difference? Like, and how?
Absolutely. There's Portland people that live here. They don't like to see homeless people on the street. I've never seen so many homeless women in my life. And there's a huge fear factor. These women get abused, raped, taken advantage of, unless they get connected to another homeless man that is their protector. It's very disturbing. And people that have money, that are out spending the money in the community, they don't want to walk by homeless people. You don't want to see a very old person with no shoes or ripped pants or just dirty and like wearing this, you know, just kind of pushing all of their belongings along. It's horrible. Yeah. And there is not a real path to help them get off the streets. There's no path. There's no real support because people don't want to fund it. Nobody wants to fund the homeless people because it's a deep problem. It's not just the housing. It's the mental state.
Yeah.
It's their financial situation. Like, we all know that if you are financially trapped, you cannot do anything. Like, you need to have money to make yourself have a more enriched life, to actually have a stable life, to be able to feel mentally clear. It's Andrew talks about it, how he says that our mental, basically, if you can get out of scarcity. So these people are living in deep, deep scarcity of where they are schizophrenic or they're fearful, or they have to be because it's a survival tactic. What I want to do is I want to work with a nonprofit that already can work with the homeless, and then maybe create this binding agency where we will get them a bank account and we'll get them assigned to some kind of address so that they can receive their freedom dividend. Some volunteers can help them have access to it, use it collectively. Maybe we say we'll use a percentage of it so that we can get you in this housing. We'll use another percentage of it so that you can get clean food and clean clothing and clean hair, you know, and then maybe we can, I think it would be pair really great with Medicare for all, or some kind of form of Medicare for all, because then maybe we can get them go see a doctor and maybe, you know, get on some kind of medication. Like, there's a lot of baby steps that need to happen, but with having the government give them $1,000 a month, if you have people that can help them organize that in a way that'll get them a leg up, that's more than what is being offered right now.
Well, yeah. And plus, it's not just them getting $1,000 a month. It's all the people that already work in the nonprofits all getting $1,000 a month.
Exactly.
And it's all the people in Portland on the streets that have, like, you know, they don't feel good about walking by a homeless person and feeling like, oh, I can't give them anything. Like, if they had, you know, if we're living in more abundance, like, everybody be more willing to help. And it would create, I think, this really positive vibe, you know, of just like, hey, we can solve this together. Like now we all got $1,000 a month. I mean, you get like, a bunch of us together that already care about this issue, then now we got, tons of money to like get something done here. Even if we only used a portion of that $1,000 or only did it for like a year altogether, that's great, and it's just, I think it would just change that mentality of like, get out of my way, like homeless person, like I gotta go and, buy some shoes or whatever. I'm going to work, or, that kind of vibe is like, and then it creates that value too. It's like, oh no, like nobody's at zero. Everybody starts at 1,000. So that homeless person now has more value to just like our society, which sadly functions all in capitalism and, only sees people as, whatever value they have in the marketplace. And it'll give them that, minimum value to be like, hey, like, they can get started. They can go and rent a hotel room, get a shower, get some basic clothes, go out and like maybe find some kind of manual labor they could do for a few days. And then just like, it just creates that feeling and that vibrance. And I think Portland is a great place because people do care. People don't want to see homeless people on the street. And I think it does happen in these West Coast places just because, yeah, we're more accepting of it. Like we just are. Like, people in San Francisco, LA, Portland, Seattle, people don't really want them to be like kicking homeless people out and have them have nowhere to go. Like where that might fly in Dallas or, some of these other towns, they'll be like, just kick them out and give them a bus ticket out of here. We'll be like, no, let's try to help them and let's not, they can have their tent there. That's fine. But if we had more resources and more abundance mindset, then I think we could solve it. I honestly think it could be solved like way sooner than people think if we just like get out of this mentality.
Well, and it's also paired with Andrew Yang's idea to have safe people that are addicted to hard. You have those, what are those called? The safe places where you can kind of get off of heavy drugs. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. What are those called, Tom?
I don't know the name of the official, like where it's like safe injection sites, like where you can.
It's basically
safe injection sites.
Safe injection. Yeah. So I mean, like you can be like, okay, people have addiction problems. They need to wean off of them, and otherwise they're extremely sick. Yeah. So I mean, that paired with the financial support, paired with what she was saying, and even Andrew speaks to this, that people have more value and more time to give back to the community and do more nonprofit work. So all those volunteers are getting $1,000 a month and helping those homeless people get off the street. So it's just like having access to that makes a huge change and a huge impact. And if you have the right people mindset, like what she's saying, West Coast people, we don't want to see it. We also don't want to treat them like you need to get out of my way. We want to, if we had a way to do it, we would do it. We would help them. We would get it out, get it taken care of, and help our brothers and sisters because they are humans just as much as us, and they have as much value as we do. The fact that we think otherwise is ridiculous. We all came into this world the same. We're all leaving the world the same. And for us to have more value in a human than we do like pets, like, we have these places where if you saw a bunch of stray dogs on the street, you'd be like, whoa, my gosh, what's going on? Collect them and put them in a shelter and people adopt them. But for human beings, we're like, it's fine. That's their choice. And I hate having that mindset, people feeling that way. And I don't think it's good for society overall. And like she said, Portlanders are down to help. Like we are pro people, pro human life and experience, and I think we could do it with the Freedom Dividend.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I suspect it would be transformational for the homelessness problem, and might even give rise to a lot of really interesting nonprofits that are created to provide services to homeless folks who now have some resources and need help with that transition. Let's take a quick data break.
Okay.
I know, Jenna, you're not, I'm not going to be quizzing you on any data question. We're just going to look at some data together. I'll give you my 2 cents, and then I would love to see if you guys had any thoughts about it.
Okay.
This one is talking about the issues that people cared about and how they reacted before and after the debate. So specifically,
which debate?
Yeah, I want to focus on this right-hand column, racism, sexism, and discrimination. And what it shows is that after the debate, Biden had a really nice bump in terms of consideration from people who care deeply about this specific issue. Harris Booker did pretty good. Warren did pretty good. Yang actually did not do well for people who care deeply about racism, sexism, and discrimination. And, obviously, the three of us have some, personal experience with being, not in the majority. And we're supportive of Yang, and we think that his candidacy, he as a leader, his policies speak to people who have been victims of discrimination. I'm just wondering, why do you think he's not doing that well with other people who care about this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that somebody like Biden is going to do really well in that category because they've been in politics so long that they, for one, Biden was Obama's VP, so you just have that. And so if he says something Obama, people are like, yeah, he loves Obama, and then immediately associate that with not being racist. Because that's how our minds work. And he always brings up Obama, and people, he knows that just him talking about, I was Obama's VP. And I mean, the sexism thing is super weird to me because I think, Biden's kind of been kind of creepy with women over the years. And I just think that it's hard. And I think that he has a way of he's got the pander down to where he doesn't even have to make sense. His sentences don't actually pull together into a coherent thought, but he has the right little words in there. And somehow we're like, yeah, those words.
That sounds good.
Yeah, you throw all those words together in a salad and you throw some other nice little, sound bites in there and you make this awesome little political salad and here you go and you serve it up and people eat it up.
It's also hard to change older people's minds. They are kind of stuck on something. They're stuck on something. It's I'm not speaking for all elderly people, but I work speaking to the elderly people every day. And when they have a specific mindset, it's kind of like how they stick to it. I've always felt this way, or I've always done this.
Yeah.
And if they already have trust instilled in a person, and it's a repetitive thing, we're creatures of just
habit,
knowing what we know. We like the familiar, and he's familiar.
Yeah.
And Yang is a completely outside. He's very unfamiliar. He is way outside of the norm, which we're excited about. But when you have an older population, they're like, well, who are you and what do you do about?
Well, sorry.
No, it's okay.
But plus, Yang doesn't know how to do that as well. Especially in the first debate, he was kind of struggling, he doesn't know how to do the soundbitey pander type of thing. He's very data driven. He's very about policy, and he really shines when he's on stage by himself. He's still getting in the groove with the debate thing because they do these weird talking points and that he hasn't heard for 30 years, or he hasn't been coached by some high up debate coach that for example Buttigieg paid $10 million for. So he just hasn't had the funding and the connections to do that. He's definitely improved a lot, but he just doesn't have much to say on those issues because I feel he doesn't think it's he just is well, obviously, I'm not, obviously I'm for women. Obviously, I'm, he just doesn't see it as identity politics, being pushed to the top there.
He doesn't he's very data driven, and I don't think he understands that there's a likability that's very important to the population. Trump got into office because he was saying things that the major populace wanted to hear. He was saying things that were people are oh yeah, I want jobs, and oh yeah, let's blame somebody else for our problems. And he was just trying to work the people over. And that's how he got, I believe, the majority of his vote. Andrew Yang is I have good facts, I have great policies, but he has to be likable. He has to connect with people. Even Harris, she's always I'm a granddaughter, I have a granddaughter, and I'm a mother. And she's trying to connect to those people. She's trying to say, oh my gosh, okay, I'm a mother too.
Okay, she's an aunt.
I'm an aunt, whatever.
She's my niece.
And she's using those lines to try to connect with a person. I think Andrew Yang needs to do more work on saying, hey, what he did where he met up that trucker. Hey, I met with this trucker and I connected with him purposely. And he, you know, like if he was like, hey, I met lesbians, these 2 lesbians for Yang, and they're trying to make it on their own in Portland.
Yeah, I do
like,
want him to bring that up. Like I told him when I met him, actually.
Like talk about it, because then all the lesbians that are listening to you are going to pay attention.
And I feel like he has a hard time doing that. He was kind of like, yeah, like I'm like, but you gotta do it. It's politics. Like you gotta like be like
women, like women's right. He mentions like, his wife and his autistic son a lot, but he has to connect to more people, more human experiences. Yes, data, but we really want to hear similarities. We want to hear that, oh, he's speaking to me directly, or he's talking to a group of people that I can resemble, and I'm going to hear that. And I think that's where he needs to kind of tweak his speeches, his answers, and he needs to kind of talk a little bit more too. Like Biden just yada 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 yada. Even if it doesn't make sense, he's getting airtime.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even when he talks about any people that he encounters, you get the sense, especially earlier in his campaign, he'd always almost apologize for it. Like, oh, I hate to bring up, I was talking to this couple in New Hampshire. And it's like, dude, this is the game, man.
Yeah.
And you gotta talk about the lesbians in Oregon. That's great. Like, I mean, that's so cool.
Yes.
But I feel like he shines in the 60-minute interviews, not the 60-second kind of answers.
He tries to get so much out, and I like, you know, I kind of hear him like struggling to like put together in his head because his brain's working faster than his mouth, and he's like, and he does, but it's like for the most general like population, it goes way over their head. I think still. So,
I feel like he nails, like he speaks in paragraphs and in prose, and it's beautiful, but it doesn't lend itself to those like kind of 12-person on the stage environments. And he seems to also have the very, very short answer, okay, but he hasn't really nailed the 90-second kind of thing, where I do feel like Buttigieg,
he's good.
You're like, oh, dude, he's in the pocket. Like it's like you had a stopwatch and you're like, oh my God, it's perfect.
Some real good coaches. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
Have it like very nailed with like the right phrase to say and like the right tone and cadence. And he's been practicing like, and he's a smart dude. And
he's a smart dude.
And he's like way at the top in Iowa. I mean, like I'm looking at it right now. I'm like, man, he could take Iowa. I mean, it's not.
He's got like dozens of offices in Iowa. I mean, obviously he raised like 20 million each quarter. I mean, the guy's formidable for sure. I'd be curious, like what are your views? I mean, obviously it would be kind of groundbreaking to have the first gay nominee, potentially first openly gay president. Who knows, right? How did you think about Buttigieg? Like, I'm guessing you considered him, and what were your thoughts?
I didn't really consider him too much, just because the first things I heard about him were that he was taking a lot of corporate money.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big turnoff right out the gate. And I looked into it, and he was, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he worked for some of those military private contractors.
I don't know.
In the Middle East, after he was, out of the military, that he was working for private military contractors, or, and he's gotten some money from that as well. And it's kind of a turnoff to me. I mean, it's like, yeah, that'd be awesome, to have the first gay president would be cool, but at what cost? I mean, I'm not going to sell my soul or like I don't want to sell out to do that. And I don't want it to be like, I mean, it's the whole identity politics thing again. It's like, would it have been cool to have Hillary Clinton be the first woman president? Yes. And I was even behind her, and I was excited about that. But it came at a cost of like her being very corporate and for the military industrial complex. And, would she have really been any different than a man? Probably not, but she was a woman. So it's cool. It would have been cool. But then like, if there's somebody better, then, I mean.
And I think that speaks a lot to us being YangGang. I mean, a lot of people are like, well, why aren't you voting Warren? Like, why aren't you voting for a woman president? Or why are you not voting for a gay president? My father said the same thing. He's like, oh, well, you should look into Buttigieg. He's gay. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not like a qualifying, like, I want him to run our country and to like make good changes. What are his policies? Like, what is actually going to help me as a woman supporting myself, or two women trying to support ourselves? And Heidi says this a lot. She says, what politician is really pro gay marriage, because it's like, okay, well, now we have it, but who is putting in policies in place to actually support gay marriage? Well, if Buttigieg really wanted to, and there's also a separate classification of gay male relationships and gay women relationships.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Males make more money. Males are better fitted in society to do really well in any kind of job or position. Women have a little bit harder time, especially two women. So maybe he doesn't really understand that there's still financial struggles to be in a gay relationship. But especially if you're not in a very open-minded state. I mean, there's still a lot of states in our country that are very not pro gay marriage. But Andrew Yang actually wants to support us. Warren doesn't really want to. Buttigieg doesn't really want to either. I think he's kind of trying to support his own agenda. And
he didn't have any policies.
He didn't
either.
have
when
any
he first
policies
came out.
really,
When he first came out, I don't think he had any
help us.
policies. He was just like, I'm just all about values, and he has this like
Right.
charm, and he's highly intelligent, and he sounds great, but there was like really nothing there. Like when I looked, I'm like, well, there's nothing there, and he's just got a lot of money. He's just going to all these corporate fundraisers, so he's got a huge bankroll. And I'm like, I mean, you gotta have a little more substance than that. I'm not,
being gay is not a qualifying factor to run the country.
Yeah.
We want a quality human being to do the job. Your sexual orientation has no part in that. So.
Yeah. No, it's great to get your guys' input, and that was my take as well with Buttigieg. I mean, I still like him. I feel like he's super smart, but I don't feel like he's in the same class as Yang in terms of life experience as well as depth of policies. I would love to consider Buttigieg like in a Yang administration. I think there could be something there. And Heidi, to answer your question, I just looked it up. He worked for the Cohen Group, which was William Cohen, the former Secretary of Defense, set up a consulting group of former Defense Department leaders that does work on consulting, but they don't list the clients.
Right.
So it's kind of
a little shady. It seemed a little just.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't working for Greenpeace. Let's say that.
Right. It just seemed a little off, and I think I looked up his salary somewhere. It was pretty large, or some range that they were given, and I was like, not super into the military-industrial complex. I don't know.
Yeah. They specialize in multinational clients doing overseas business, real estate, and natural resources stuff. I don't know.
Military-industrial complex. That's all I hear.
And Andrew's building like nonprofits for entrepreneurs. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of difference here. Like you can see what people's real passion is in the world.
Yeah, he comes from education, and then he's like, oh, I want to help people get into good schools. And he's like, oh wait, it doesn't matter if they get into good schools. Like there's no jobs, and there's then he went into that. I mean, that just seems like a genuine person who's trying to do his best to do good things, and he was successful at it. So he's like a millionaire. He's not a crazy multi-millionaire. He's definitely not a billionaire, even though some people still say he is out there. It's really funny. But, he did well, and he just wants to help, and you can see that. It's a genuine thing, and I just didn't really see that from any of the other candidates, really. I mean, I think they're good people and all, but I just wasn't seeing that like deep, like, I want to solve your problem, really into it. Let's figure out what's going on. Something's off here. And this is what I believe it is. Here's the facts. Here's the data that I found.
What I really like about Yang is that he makes a big importance on mental health. He talks in our youth and being addicted to social media and how that is damaging to them. He talks about people suicide due to mental health. He says that there needs to be a therapist in the White House, like our president needs to have therapy. He wants to do free marriage counseling. He is huge on what I think is a big missing element in our health system, like our healthcare system. And the fact that he's addressing it and he's talking about it, are any other candidates talking about that? Or any other elected officials saying that this is a huge, important deal, that we all should have some mental health and stability? And have some check-ins and have somebody helping us with that, because we're humans, we're all in our head, and to like have the vision and the heart of saying our leaders need to have it, our married couples that are whether they're having children or not, it's important. Our children, we have to worry about how much time they spend on social media and how that's impacting their mental health and how their personal vision of themselves. And it's big, and it's something that should have been happening a long time ago. But the fact that that's a big push for him and nobody else is really making that a big deal. I mean, that's why we have homelessness. That's why we have crazy people like Trump. Like, can you imagine if he had to go see a therapist? Like, how bad that would be?
I want to see that videotape for sure.
I think it would be great for him.
It would
to
be
see
awesome.
a therapist.
I support it, but he would never go. But it would be great.
It would be awesome. Yeah, because he's got a huge ego complex. Like
he has so much anger and so much insecurity, and he just needs to just like process that shit and own it and like deal with it. Yeah.
That's the thing is like, yeah, I like the Yangs. Like, you need a therapist in the Oval Office. Like, you need and it's just like everybody needs it. So it's just like it's the fact that everybody does. Obviously, the president does too. And I really think he would remove a ton of stigma around.
Yeah, I think that is a generational thing where I remember when in my family, there was someone that was struggling with some mental health stuff and no one would talk about it. It was just this kind of very kind of taboo topic. And I think Yang, because he's a little younger than the current front runners, I think he comes from a generation where this is just like going to the doctor for high cholesterol or whatever. It's a chemical issue in your brain, and like there are things that people need to process and stuff in their past that they need to kind of unpack. And I agree with you that it's interesting, and no one else is talking about that.
Yeah,
and it's a root of a lot of problems.
He's Gen X. I think we're ready for our first Gen X president. I mean, we are.
Yeah, it's about time.
I grew up on Gen X. I'm like at
this cool 90s t-shirt.
Yeah,
I love it.
Like he's cool. Like out of like a 90s movie that I was watching when I was like a preteen, and I looked up to Gen X. I'm kind of on the border of millennial and Gen X, but I looked up to Gen X because they were so real. They would be like, I'm sad, it's okay. Life is hard. Like I'm emo, like I don't know, I can cry. Like Alanis Morissette, Nirvana, that type of vibe that was going on in the 90s. I mean, it's just like you grew up through that time. So I think we're ready. Like we haven't had, my Gen X president. It's probably time.
I think he's got a lot of stigmas, a lot with his policies.
Yeah.
Well, I know we said we try to keep it to around an hour, and I wanted to make sure that we took some questions because we actually have about 200 concurrent viewers at the moment.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So while those are starting, so guys, feel free to put some questions in the chat. And while we're waiting for the questions to come in, I guess I saw a couple of questions when we were talking. One was they were wondering, what is the green drink that you are consuming? It looks very refreshing.
LaCroix, key lime.
Key lime LaCroix.
The best flavor.
It's really delicious.
Key lime LaCroix. I don't know why, but it's the best flavor of LaCroix. And they don't have it everywhere, which is really irritating. But when you find it, just buy it all out in the store.
I've been sober now for about 3 months, and so LaCroix is like a hardcore staple in our house. So it's amazing. Tastes delicious.
That's great. Yeah, when you were talking about homelessness and sort of a dependency on sort of chemicals and stuff, like I was a smoker, just nicotine for years, and it was so freaking hard to quit. So now when I see homeless people and they're addicted to opioids and stuff, I can't imagine how they can get off of that stuff. Like if you go down that path, and it's not surprising that you could be like, there are probably people who had great jobs, had families and everything, and you go down that path and it's really hard.
I mean, there's doctors, I forget, there's like an interview somewhere on YouTube. I think you probably find it, but there's like a doctor who's homeless in San Francisco now, addicted to opioids or opiates because he could get him as a doctor.
Yeah.
Got addicted to him. Now is like a junkie, like on the street. I don't know the exact link to that or anything, but it's a common story of actually people, in this country. That's why becoming addicted to pills, and then it leads to, heroin. It really does go that route. I mean, it's very sad.
All right. First, one of the first questions I saw was, will you guys get involved in the campaign kind of formally? I've seen some people like Lacey Delane, she went from like just a hardcore volunteer to now she's working on the campaign. Is that something you could see yourselves doing?
I would love to. I think I've applied for like 6 different positions. Like I was like, I'm ready to quit my job. Like I don't care. Like pay me like half of what I make. But so far I haven't heard anything. So I mean, if anybody in the campaign is listening, you want to push my resume to the top of a stack. I mean,
She's very knowledgeable. She's a great problem solver.
Yeah.
Hard worker, crazy hard worker.
so far I've done a lot of texting for Yang. I've done yeah, we did in-person stuff. We sold merch at the Portland event.
All of it, sold all of it.
Canvas and stuff like that. So yeah, just volunteering for now, but I would love to formally get involved in the campaign. Maybe, you know, down the road when he wins the nomination, there'll be more opportunities for things like that in Oregon. Oregon's not the biggest, most important state, sadly, but maybe down the road if we lived in Nevada still or
Nevada. Yeah. Nevada would be strong.
If we're still in Nevada, we probably
could probably like I'm born and raised there, but you know, we could probably have some pull. It's, you know, it's a balance of your passion for Yang and also being able to keep food on the table. So, you know what I mean? If we could get her involved, I would be totally down to support that in any way. And I have a lot of enthusiasm. I can get people to say yes.
Push my resume up that stack if you're out there.
Heidi Briones.
Heidi Briones. Yeah.
Heidi's ready. Heidi, put her in, coach. All right. Do you think enough artists know about Yang? I guess there's probably some artists out in Portland. Do you feel like the artist community is plugged into this? And
I definitely don't think I mean, obviously I don't think enough people know about him, period, still.
Yeah.
So I definitely don't think enough artists know about him. I think as an artist, you're very much in your own head, in your own world, and politics is a big turnoff to a lot of artists because it's just like not creative in a lot of aspects that, you know, they're more into. And so I think it can be a little bit of a hard bridge sometimes if they're not already politically active. Like I do have a lot of friends that make music and things like that. And if they're already a little bit politically inclined, I think they would be really into him. But it might be a hard bridge to gap, but I would love to have an outreach in some aspect to reach more artists because, I mean, $1,000 a month is incredibly great for creativity and art, of course. So I would love to see more artists for Yang, for sure.
Maybe we could do like a competition or something, get some submissions through our channel. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we can pull some people together and get the word out. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we could do art for Yang. I mean, there are a lot of artists. That is a good idea. There are a lot of artists on the street in Portland that are trying to sell their art. And, you know, I mean, it's definitely something.
It's very pro creativity here, like self-expression. So I feel like we could definitely kind of map the city with some Yang art, some Yang love.
Well, and related to that, what are your thoughts when you talk with other folks in the gay community about Yang? What do they think? Like what's the common kind of view?
I think it's been fairly open. I think you wore like a math pin out or something.
I'm always wearing Yang merch, and people are always like Yang.
And we had one woman came up to us. We were just out at an event, and she's like, "Oh, like is that Andrew Yang?" And we were like, "Yeah." And she's like, Are you gonna vote for him? Are you really gonna vote for him? We're like, yes, definitely. Like, do you think he has a chance though? Do you really think? And this is not a gay event. This is at like a lesbian only event. And we were like, yes, you know. I'm like, and she was like, wow, okay. Like, I mean, I'm interested. I just don't think he has a shot. And
we hear that a lot. We hear people like him, but don't feel like he can actually make it to the office. Is what was kind of like our major pushback. But people are like, I like him. I like his policies. I like his idea.
I've heard the same kind of thing from a lot of Democrats, which is like, oh, I like him, Tom, like, but I don't think he's gonna actually get there. Like, of course I'll support him if he gets the nomination. Ha ha ha.
Well, how's he gonna get it if you don't support him?
Yeah, I know. And then I don't think they realize that but then when you drop some facts on them and you're like, well, you know, he raised 10 million last quarter. He had the biggest dollar increase quarter over quarter, second only to Bernie. He is ahead of Harris in New Hampshire. He's, number 5 out of like when there were 24 that entered. That's a pretty big deal. And yet I think part of the challenge is they never hear about him other than from other YangGang people, because when you turn on the news, it's like you have to struggle. Like if they mention him, like people in my house, we're doing high fives. We're like, oh my God, they said his name, you know?
They said John Yang. That's close enough,
That's
right?
we'll take it. We'll take it. John and Emily. Okay, great. Let's do it.
But they said
So
no, I think it's I have my grandma. My grandma's probably the biggest person I'm trying to yang, I guess. And I've been trying to yang her for like 6 months, and he's like, oh, I like him. He seems like a nice young man kind of thing. I just don't think he has a shot. And I'll be like, well, he's beating, and I name the people that he's beating.
yeah.
She so far hasn't been impressed. She's like, well, none of those people were going to win either, though, you know? She's like, it's going to be Biden. That's like what she thinks. She's just like, I don't want him, like, but I just think that's how it's going to be. And she's kind of leaning towards Warren, but she's super jaded and just doesn't really care. She's like, I don't really like any of these people, and Trump's probably just going to win again. But she's a hardcore Democrat. But even her, she has like such low belief in the entire system, period. So I think it's just a lot of it is disbelief in the system. So they don't see it as like, they're like, you know, like the establishment will just crush him at some point, even if he gets like all the way up to barely grasping it, you know, they'll just somehow like make it not happen.
Well, and I was actually, now that I was thinking about it, I was speaking with a lesbian coworker, and I said, have you heard of Yang? She's like, no. And I gave him a card. I have like these little cards at work. Political at work, I don't care. And she goes, well, what about Bernie? And I said, well, he's the younger Bernie. He's the Bernie that has the vision for the problems that are going to happen. Like, I feel like Bernie has always been pro the issues that we've had, but I think Andrew is the younger, more well-versed for what's going to be happening in the next couple decade. And she goes, oh, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And so, like, that's kind of how I'm pushing Bernie lovers in my gay community of saying, hey, you know, he's just the younger, more better option. You know, no, nothing against Bernie. He even likes Bernie in some of his policies. And so that was a good.
Yeah. We have we have another YangGanger at work. It's like he's got a Yang 2020 sticker. We're the two, and so we're like, hey, what's up?
But it makes her go, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so that was a kind of cool turn, you know.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I mean, a lot of like lesbians that I talk to just don't really care about politics as much as maybe I do. So
Warren or Bernie is kind of like what I'm kind of getting.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, they're kind of just like, I feel like people still think it's too early to care, which is really sad because I mean, like, well, when are you going to start caring? Like, when exactly is your like,
where's the cutoff?
Like, is it like February 1st? Like, when can I talk to you about this? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's 90 something days till Iowa. If we don't influence that outcome now, then we're just going to get whatever the party kind of gives us. And, you know, then we'll be deciding between potentially like the lesser of two evils in some cases. Wow. And I really worry about the general election. Like, I actually think Yang may have the hardest time getting the nomination, but he would have the easiest time winning the general, because I can't see a lot of independents, and certainly not that many Obama Trump supporters like going for Warren. I don't know that will. Yeah. And I worry, like, can you imagine another 4 years of Trump?
I really hope it doesn't happen. And I honestly think, Warren would just get completely demolished. And I mean, I don't dislike her necessarily, but it's just like, I just know she would get crushed by Trump. Trump already has so much ammunition just like waiting here, like, look, give it to me.
Yeah, he'd be happy about it. He'd be like, yeah.
See, I've said it before. I think you agreed with me, but I can see types like Romney and Kasich and these anti-Trump Republicans going for Yang, you know?
Yeah.
I don't see them going for any of these other people. They do not like Biden, Warren, Sanders. They don't like these people. You know, they've hated them for a while. Like, they're not into them. But, like, Andrew Yang coming out there, like, being, like, you know, a lot more moderate, you know, having policies that cross bridges, both sides. I could totally see them being like, you know what? I've never done this, but I'm going to endorse, you know, a Democrat for president. You know, it's a huge statement to make, but we got to get this guy out of there so we can get things done, you know?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, especially with the Warren, what they'll call Warren Care, and they'll say, hey, all of you who are on company private insurance, you're going to lose it the moment she gets into office, and good luck. Like, who knows if the American kind of federal government is going to be able to hook you up. We can tell you right now that they're having they're struggling with veterans. So if they can't help veterans, what are they going to do? You know, like, the messaging will be almost too easy for Trump. It would be like the one thing that's, because we know voters care about healthcare. And if the bumper sticker is Warren's going to take away your health insurance and force you on some sort of low grade government program, I could see a lot of independents being like, whoa, I don't want that, And so I worry that we're going to lose the general if we don't think like 3 steps ahead in the primaries.
Yeah, that's sad. I mean, that's why I think his slogan's Make America Think Harder. I don't think anybody's really thinking this deeply about it at all. And they're just going to be low information voters going to the ballot box come February, March, and
he needs some good commercials. He needs some good ads.
Yes. I'm so happy that he's starting. I saw the one. I thought that was good. And but he needs the moolah to get these ads out there.
Donating is important for sure.
Bring the money. Bring the money. Stop.
You need all 3. We need all 3. You can't just have. All right. Well, Heidi and Jenna, I really want to thank you for coming on to the show. It was such a treat and really enjoyed the conversation.
Super fun. This was great, Tom. We'd love to come back, and you just keep doing what you're doing. And I can't wait till you get Andrew on for the 3rd time. Because I know
we need to raise $50K to get him on the 3rd time, but I think we can do it. And this time will kind of fun because we're gonna have other YangGang kind of creators participate. By the way, if you guys wanted to participate, just email me later.
Yeah, we will.
And basically, the top 2 will for sure, it'll be a panel interview, like kind of like multiple people like this, and the top 2 will interview him, but then one like randomly picked one. So it means that like you don't have to be the one that raises the most, like, because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to get this guy more money so he can buy some more TV ads. So it's not really a competition, but it'll be just kind of a fun thing. And then hopefully if he raises 30 million in the 4th quarter, I think that would really give him a lot of dry powder to go into Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina and shake things up big time. And look at Harris. Harris did not do a good raise. She ran out of money. She's literally closing offices in New Hampshire. Like, we do not want that. That is like a dying startup. Like, we need to be gaining momentum, not losing. And so,
I mean, whatever. At this point, I'm kind of ruthless. But like, the field needs to narrow a lot so that it's just too crazy right now, and people just look on the screen and see 12 people, and they immediately get bored and turned off, and they're just like, forget this. Like, it's way different. I don't think we've ever had this many people, ever. Like, ever in a primary, at this stage of a primary, this many people. And it's a huge disadvantage for someone like Yang, because, I mean, if there were only 4 or 5 people running, I mean, it would just be a completely different game. So, I mean, I think sadly, some of these people they're bleeding money. They need to get out, and we need to have less people up there and a smaller race so we can really decide, who's really the best instead of just, whatever we're doing right now.
Maybe the magic combination is we need these people to be those other folks to be dropping out, and concurrently we need to start buying airtime, because the concern is that their supporters then go to the usual suspects and be like, oh, I guess I'll support Warren now, and they don't even consider Yang, because the polling suggests that only 1 out of 5 Beto supporters are considering Yang, and most of them are planning to go to Warren. And it's like, shit. So when these guys drop out, yes, it's good to narrow the field, but it's not great if they just go to the default choices. So we need to be out there and kind of win them over now. And then when their candidates drop out, they'll be like, oh, Yang was my second choice anyway. So, but fingers crossed, we all dig deep, because this is a quarter that matters. Like, if we can, everybody should donate. And thank you, Heidi and Jenna again. Let's get you back on for sure. Hopefully one of many conversations.
All right, awesome. It was great.
All right, you guys keep it real.
All right, have a nice evening. Bye.
Bye.